So we'll start with our Manglacharan prayers, and we will be resuming from 1941, first canto, chapter 9, verse 41. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Agyanatimirandasya Agyananjana Shalakaya
T'es bien médecin, mon frère, mais mon frère a connecté avec moi, je te connais.
Chakshurunmilitam Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, Hare Krishna. So we'll resume with 1941 prayers by Bhishma Dev at the time of his passing away. Muni Gananapavariya Sankule Antaha Sadasi Yudhishthir Rajasuyayesham Aranam Upapeda Ikshanaya Mam Drishgochare Shaviratma. At the Rajasuya Yajna sacrifice performed by Maharaja Yudhishthir, there was the great assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders. And in that great assembly, Lord Shri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of God. This happened during my presence, and I remember the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. So in the previous verse, Bhishma Dev had described Krishna's nature as being most merciful. And he had glorified Krishna as the personality of Godhead. And now, very much in the mood of Arjuna and Bhagavad Gita, he is making this point that it's not just me who considers Krishna to be the personality of Godhead. This is not the speculation of one person. This is not the product of agitated mind of a person who is dying, but this is the mature realization of some of the most exalted personalities. And he quotes Rajasuya Yajna, in which there were great sages, there were Raj Rishis, there were kings, even the Devas had appeared, and in Mahabharata it is said that even Lord Shiva appeared for a brief time, and they all accepted Krishna as the personality of Godhead. So, so Bhishma concludes this observation with a prayer of gratitude. So he says, Mam Drishi Gochar Esha Aviratma. The same Krishna, Atma, so Atma he is interpreted by Prabhupada as Krishna, the same Atma, the same Krishna has now become visible to my eyes. He is my soul, the Lord of my life, Mamatma. I am grateful that he has fulfilled my request. So Prabhupada in the purport says that, so in that great assembly, Lord Shri Krishna was the cynosure of neighboring eyes. So cynosure is the center of attraction. The neighboring eyes, it's a little quaint, I guess, British English. So neighboring eyes basically means eyes in the Rajasuya Yajna, eyes around Krishna. Everyone wanted to see Lord Krishna, and everyone wanted to pay his humble respects to the Lord. Bhishmadev remembered all this and was glad that his worshipful Lord, the personality of Godhead, was present before him in his actual form, in his actual formal presence. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that Bhishma is praying that he is engaged and he remains engaged in the service of Krishna. So if you look at the previous verses, we see that Bhishma is following the process of meditating on Naam, Roop, Gun and Leela. So he has been addressing Krishna through various names, Vijay Sakhe and Vijay Rathe, in generally in association with Arjun, also called him Mukunda, Krishna, Bhagavan. So he's meditating on the names of Krishna in relationship to his devotees, in relationship to his qualities. Then he's meditating on the form of Krishna, especially as Parthasarthi. So in the previous verse, he had said that may Krishna with the bridle rope in his hand and the whip in his hand, may Krishna with his face smeared with dust and perspiration and blood remain. So he's meditating on a particular form. Then he's meditating on the qualities of Krishna. The specific quality that he's meditating most on is his interaction with Arjun. How out of affection for Arjun he became his charioteer, how he protects his devotees, how in order to uphold the vows of his devotees, he lets go of his own devotees. So this mood of Bhaktavatsalya. And he's meditating on the Leela also. The specific Leela that he's meditating on is how Krishna charged at him with the wheel of the chariot in his hand. Here is meditating on Krishna being glorified by the greatest personalities of the universe. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that this is samadhi, and the yogis, they try to meditate on Krishna through a mechanical way, but this is far more superior because it is much more pleasing and much more natural. So which is why in Bhagavad Gita 12.5 Krishna says, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. But on the other hand, a person can very naturally and easily, and we can use ourselves as an example, that we definitely are not advanced yogis, but we can easily sit for 2 hours, try to chant Krishna's name. We can sit in Krishna Katha. I've seen people sitting in Bhagavad Saptas from morning to evening. They can sit for long times over there. The leelas are attractive. So that is also yoga. But that is directed to Krishna's personal form. Prabhupada also indicates that this verse clarifies that a man cannot become God after death, and God cannot be considered as a man just because he is born. So in the purport he says, the propaganda that a very great man is worshipped as God after his death is misleading, because a man after his death cannot be made into God. Nor can the personality of Godhead be a human being, even when he is personally present. Both ideas are misconceptions. The idea of anthropomorphism cannot be applicable in the case of Lord Krishna. So the reason Prabhupada is calling this out in this verse is because externally we see one person meditating on another person. So there is Bhishma and there is Krishna. So Krishna is standing right in front of him and Bhishma is lying on a bed of arrows. But Prabhupada says that that does not mean that God can become man just because Krishna is standing in a human form. And it also does not mean that man can become God, because even at the time of death, Bhishma is aspiring to serve Krishna. And this term anthropomorphism, so this is something that is often attributed to Hindu religion and Vaishnava philosophy also. So anthropomorphism is basically, anthro means human-like, and morph means to change. So anthropomorphism means to attribute human characteristics to something else, whether it is an object or an animal or God. So in the context of religion, anthropomorphism means that attributing divine characteristics to human beings, considering a human to be God. This is the biggest criticism that is levied against the Hindu religion by Christianity and Islam, where they say that how can God be a person? That's anthropomorphic. And in Prabhupada, at a different point talks out about it, but here he is using this verse to indicate that Krishna as a human form does not make Krishna human. If that was so, Bhishma would not be aspiring to surrender to serve Krishna. And elsewhere at another point he says, that makes this point that Krishna does not have a human form. We have a divine form. So Krishna has made us in his form. So he is the original form and we have a form that resembles him. So we are not anthropomorphic, but we are actually morphing the humans into the divine form. Okay, next verse, 1942. So we'll just wait for Prem Kishore Prabhu to bring it up on the screen. Okay, thank you. Tamimamaham sharirabhajam hridhi dishitam atma kalpitana pratidrisham ivanayak adharakam ekam samadhigato asmi vidut vedamoha. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that one Lord, Sri Krishna, now present before me, because now I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the heart of the mental speculators. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. So this is the last verse spoken by Bhishma Dev before he gives up his body, and it represents, it's a summary, and it's also the mature realization of Bhishma Dev. So a brief summary of the verse is that Bhishma is saying that now I have realized that the same Krishna standing in front of me, which is the two-armed Krishna, he said, now I've realized him to be the same as Parthasarathi Krishna, who is the basis of the impersonal Brahmajyoti, the omnipresent Paramatma, and all other forms of Krishna as seen in Vrindavan and Dwarka. He is like the sun that appears everywhere but is actually only one. this form of Krishna as the charioteer of Arjun may be my exclusive meditation. So the verse begins with tam, and tam literally means that, but as a pronoun, when the acharyas on Srila Prabhupada, they understand that tam is pointing to Krishna. So that's why you see tam is translated to the personality of Godhead. So Bhishma is saying Vidut Veda Moha. So freed from the misconception, Moha is misconception, freed from the misconception of what? Veda, of duality. So what's the duality that he is suffering from? That the Krishna that is standing in front of him is different from the Paramatma situated in everyone's heart. So he refers to the conditioned souls like himself as Sharira Bhajam. So Sharira Bhajam literally means that those who create their own body, and conditioned souls out of sexual union, they create their own bodies, as opposed to the liberated souls whose body is eternal and is never created or destroyed. So what happens for this Sharira Bhajam? So in their heart, Krishna appears as Paramatma. Hriday Dishtaham. He says that in the heart of this condition, because Paramatma only appears for the conditioned souls, not for the liberated souls. So he says in the heart of the Sharira Bhajam, Hriday Dishtam, in the heart, Krishna appears as the Paramatma form. That Krishna is also present in the heart of the Atma Kalpitanam. So this verse has 2 or 3 alternate translations, and I'll go over them quickly. Just they don't really disagree with each other, but they just kind of churn different realizations out of it. So that's what it makes it sweet, that how one thing can mean can be so much saturated by different kinds of realizations. So Bhishma is saying the same Paramatma is present as the super soul of the Atma Kalpana, of the mental speculators. So the reason he's calling them out separately is to indicate that Krishna is impartial, that he's present in the heart of his devotees, and he's present in the heart of those who are not devotees. So he's appreciating that quality of Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur translates Alpa Kalpitanam slightly differently and says that one who is also in my heart. Bhishma is saying that one who is in the heart of the Sharira Bhajam, the materially conditioned souls, and Atma Kalpitam, and one who is also in my heart. With that translation, this fragment of the verse reads that Krishna is present before me is not different from the Paramatma who is in everyone's heart and also in my heart. So the meaning remains unchanged, that Bhishma Dev is acknowledging that the Krishna standing in front of him is also the basis of Paramatma, whether he is in the heart of the mental speculators and the devotees, whether he's in the heart of Bhishma Dev or the others, it's a detail. Then Bhishma Dev is then acknowledging Krishna as the most compassionate, and he is doing so by calling forth the analogy of the sun. So the analogy of the sun is used in 2 ways. One is the analogy of the sun is used to understand Krishna's presence as the Paramatma. That the sun, there is one sun in the sky, but it shines on the head of everybody. everybody thinks that I have a sun on my head. There is one Krishna, and he appears as Paramatma in everybody. So that is one understanding of relating Krishna to Paramatma. Another understanding is that when Krishna freed the kings that were imprisoned by Jarasandh, he appeared as the sun in front of them. So Jarasandh had captured 99 kings, and he wanted to capture 100 kings and do a human sacrifice to become the emperor of the world. But then there is that pastime of Krishna and Bhima killing Jarasandh. And then Mahabharata, that is explained that they were all imprisoned in Kalkotris, in dark cellars. And then Krishna opened and entered, and the sun appeared. Literally the sun appeared, and metaphorically Krishna appeared as the sun. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is drawing on that analogy to say that just like Krishna appeared as the sun to the kings of imprisoned by Jarasandh, similarly Bhishma is talking about the compassion of Krishna. In Bhagavad Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami states that there is another meaning to the verse, and the way he explains it, and it's not a very different meaning, slightly different meaning. He says the previously described form, Tam, which is sitting in front of me, Imam, even appearing in the hearts of embodied souls, Sharira Bhajam Hridridi Dishtinam, has come near to me, Atma Kalpitana. Though he has a form different from the Paramatma, I see that form of Krishna now in all beings, since no other form can manifest in front of this form. So the subtle difference in the meaning over here is that Bhishma Dev, he is saying that Krishna appears as Paramatma in the heart of all embodied beings. But I am unable to see Krishna as Paramatma because the only form of Krishna that I can see is that of Parthasarathi. So Jiva Goswami says that in this way, Bhishma Dev is declaring his exclusive devotion to Krishna in the form of Parthasarathi. And then he writes that this should not be considered to indicate that certain forms of Krishna are complete or incomplete, superior or inferior. All it does is it reflects on the mood of the devotee. So there is so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur himself gives another alternate meaning to this verse, and he translates that as, and without going through the details of how he comes to it, I can just read out the translation. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that, I now know that Parthasarathi Krishna is not different from the four-handed Narayan personally manifesting in front of me now. So the reason Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says this is because if you remember, in 1930, Sutta Goswami describes Bhishma's vision as seeing Krishna in the four-handed form. And at that point, we had discussed that the reason Bhishma Dev was seeing Krishna in the four-handed form, because that is what Bhishma's Ishtadev was. That is who he was worshipping. So here Bhishma is saying that now I am not able to see that four-armed form anymore. The four-armed form that was appearing actually just 9 verses ago. So he's saying that that form that was appearing, now I am not able to see that anymore. So he said the one sun in the sky, Arkam Ekam, appears to be many, Pratidrasham Eva Na Ekada, but I am now freed from that illusion. Viduta Veda Moha. Though Krishna may appears in my heart, Atma Kalpitam, and in the heart of others, Sharira Bhajam Idriti Dishtam, I know this one Krishna only, which is Parthasarthi Krishna. He is the only object of my meditation. Samadhi Gato Asmi. So we see there's slightly different nuances, but essentially all the interpretations are pointing to the fact that Srila Prabhupada brings out in the verse that Bhishma Dev is declaring his exclusive attention, his exclusive devotion to Krishna as Parthasarthi Krishna. If you look at the prayers of Bhishma Dev, so like I said, this ends the prayers of Bhishma Dev. If you look at the prayers of Bhishma Dev, he will very often refer to Krishna as the in connection to the chariot. So in verse 33, he calls Krishna as Vijaya Sakhi, as the friend of Arjun, and this is specifically in the mode of being the charioteer of Arjun. He says Vijaya Sakhe Rati Astu Anavadaya, that let my mind go to Krishna, who is the friend of Arjun. Then in verse 35 he says Partha Sakhe Ratir Mamamsu, Ratir Mamastu, that may I develop love for the friend of Krishna. And in verse 39 he says Vijayarata Kutumba, that one who protects the chariot of Arjun. So both by explicit addressing and also by the way that he is meditating, Bhishma Dev is drawing his mind exclusively into the meditation of Krishna as Parthasarthi. And this intense form of Rup Smaran, it is the hallmark of advanced devotees. So we talk about Nam, Rup, Gun and Leela, and one can meditate on any four of them. One can meditate on the name of Krishna, on the form, on the qualities of Krishna, and the pastimes of Krishna. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the worshipable object of Bhishma Dev is Lord Shri Krishna as Parthasarthi, and that of the gopis is the same Krishna in Vrindavan as the most attractive Sham Sundar. Sometimes less intelligent scholars make a mistake and think that the Krishna of Vrindavan and that of the battle of Kurukshetra are different personalities. But for Bhishma Dev, this conception is completely removed. Even the impersonal object of destination is Krishna as the impersonal Jyoti. And the yogi's destination of Paramatma is also Krishna. Okay, so this is the end of the prayer of Bhishma Dev. I'll take a short break here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Yes, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So I have a couple of questions. So like one is, so like you mentioned that Bhishma, so like in verse 30, right, you mentioned that like, you know, he was praying to the Lord in his because in his 400 form, because he's the Ishtadev of Bhishma. So and then in this verse, like, you know, he's praying to like the Parthasarthi form. So so does the Ishtadev does the Jiva's Ishtadev changes based?
Ishtadev, so it's a good question. It was something that I asked myself. I could not get an answer that I can quote, but the reason that Prabhupada talks about the non-difference is, that was my understanding, that Srila Prabhupada calls it out and says that there is no difference between Lord Narayan and Parthasarthi. You know, so he said less intelligent scholars make a mistake. The Krishna of Vrindavan and the Battle of Kurukshetra are different personalities. Similarly, we can say that, it's a mistake to consider Lord Narayan and Parthasarathi to be different. The only other understanding I have, and this is honestly speaking me speculating, that Lord Narayan, by the mercy of Lord Narayan, Bhishmadev was able to attain the position of worshipping Parthasarathi Krishna, because Bhishma, throughout his life, he meditated on the mantra that pointed to the four-armed form of Narayan, and his encounter with Parthasarathi happened towards the end of his life. So the understanding could be that through the mercy of Lord Narayan, he developed this special attraction to Parthasarathi Krishna.
Thank you, Praji. That makes sense. And Praji, one question based it's based on the previous class, like Monday's class. So I mean, and I've noticed this even in Queen Kunti Maharani's prayers that she is so they are basically comparing themselves with somebody else. So like Bhishma Dev is comparing himself with Arjuna, Kunti Maharani is comparing herself with Yashoda. So like. I mean, we know that we should not be comparing ourselves with other devotees, in spiritual life. Like, especially the comparison is done that I am more you've been more merciful to me rather than.
So the sense I get is that this comparison is also done in the same mood that you're talking about. So the comparison, Kunti Devi compares herself with Yashoda Mai to indicate that she has received more mercy of Krishna than Kunti Devi has. Bhishma Dev is also comparing in the same mood that Arjuna is superior because he has received more mercy. Srila Prabhupada, interestingly, in the purports in both these prayers, he makes a very similar observation that devotees will mention, I'm paraphrasing here, the devotees will mention Krishna's relationship with other devotees also to invoke his mercy, because Krishna is more easily accessed through his devotees, which is why Kunti Devi is calling upon Yashoda Mai because she's a more advanced devotee. Bhishma Dev is calling on Arjun because he's a more advanced devotee to invoke that quality of mercy.
Well, actually, sorry, I misspoke. Kunti Devi is actually saying in verse 23 of her prayers, 1:8:23, that she is more fortunate because Lord Krishna had saved her sons and not Devaki's sons. So she's, comparing with Devaki in reference to Devaki, she's saying that she is more fortunate.
So if I remember correctly, she also refers to Mother Yashoda in the Damodar pastime, right? And she says that whenever I think of that pastime, my mind, I'm completely amazed by that pastime. And actually, what you say is very interesting because Bhishma Dev also compares himself to Arjun in both forms. At one point, he says that he's more fortunate than Arjun because Arjun was seeing Krishna from behind and he was able to see Krishna from up front. And then again, he's saying that Arjun is more fortunate because Krishna took that role of being subservient to Arjun. So different moods there. The basic mood is that of glorifying the devotees. And like we discussed, when Bhishma was saying he's more fortunate, he's referring to the fact that Krishna is more merciful to him. He's not really saying that he's more advanced than Arjun, or Kunti Devi is not saying that she's more advanced than Yashoda Mai. They're just acknowledging the fact that Krishna has been kinder to them.
Thank you, Priji. And one last thing. So here we were talking about in this verse, Bhishma Dev is talking about duality. So is that like the highest form of duality that we see, that seeing Krishna as a two-handed form versus Paramatma, and versus Brahma Jyoti feature or Paramatma feature? Is that uh, like the
Mhm.
topmost duality that is hard to get rid of, or is that like the base, the first level of duality, like in terms of gradations? So
Mhm. So duality, as we see, so is one of those is one of the words that has multiple interpretations. So one is, as you're saying, that Bhishma Dev is is acknowledging and thanking the fact that is free from the duality, that there's a difference between Krishna, Paramatma, and Brahman. He's also happy that he's free from the duality, that Parthasarthi Krishna is different from Paramatma. He's also thankful that he's free from the duality, that the Lord Narayan that he was seeing is different from the Parthasarthi. That is the object of his meditation. And in itself, it does not reflect whether it is, whether it is, it is the highest realization, but it is definitely the mature realization of Bhishma Dev in the journey that he's traversing. It is the mature, all of them reflect his mature realizations.
well, in terms, not I mean in not in terms of realization, Praji, in terms of duality gradations, like is that like we know that for example, um, like say for example lust, right? So there are different gradations of lust. Like there is subtle level, then there is gross level. The subtle level is more difficult to overcome. The man, the puja part, pratishta, those kind of subtle forms of lust is more difficult to overcome rather compared to the gross. So I'm just like wondering whether the duality is there also, uh, like I mean like we know that impersonalism is also very difficult to, if we look
Mm,
at it
mm,
from a very deeper level. We are all kind of impersonal in our own way and in a lot of sense.
mm.
So in that sense, whether this duality is that like very difficult to overcome, and that's why he's saying that or is this the only duality that he's talking about, or is that uh, is
So I think the answer to both your questions is yes. That yes, Bhishma Dev is grateful that in in whichever way that we interpret the duality, he is grateful that he has transcended that duality, whether it is difference between the three forms of Krishna, or between Parthasarthi Krishna and Lord Narayan, or between the Krishna in his heart and the Krishna standing in front of him. So we see, Vishnu Chakravarti Jiva Goswami, they have interpreted duality in so many ways, and he's grateful that uh, that he has transcended them. So yes, it is a very difficult, position to attain, and yes, it does reflect mature realization. um, I think one of the questions that or part of a question that you're asking is that uh, is there any gradations in the dualities that we are interpreting, the connotations to dualities, any gradations that we're interpreting? I don't get that sense. I don't think that comes through based on what Prabhupada and the other acharyas are saying. They're just reflecting. I think, for the pleasure of the devotees, what all are the kind of dualities that Bhishma Dev is grateful for overcoming, and they just leave it. They just leave it at that. It's just that they take a phrase and they churn it for nectar, but they're not extracting any tattva. At least I don't get the sense they're extracting any tattva out of it.
so how does he know that, Prabhuji, that he's out of that duality? or that he's transcended meditating on the four-handed form to now two-handed form.
So, the way we know is because he's saying it, right? So because he's saying it, that I'm thankful to having transcended the duality, and
Hare Krishna.
about the mercy that he received from Arjun. But it is one can understand that that's the mood in which Bhishma Dev is. Did I lose you? You disappeared, right? Oh no, there you are. Okay. So we can understand that that's the mood that Bhishma Dev has established in the prayer.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Nice questions. Any other points?
Prabhuji, one question, Prabhuji. Like here, Bhishma Dev is referring himself as a lesser devotee compared to Arjun. So, can we say that just like the gopis are considered superior to other devotees, and Yashoda Maya is considered probably superior to Kunti Devi? So, can we also say that like Arjun is a superior devotee than Bhishma Dev?
They're just different rasas. So Bhishma Dev is considering himself lesser than Arjun in the mood of humility. Arjun would probably consider the same thing. Just in terms of tattva, we can understand that Arjun is in the mood of Sakhyaras and Bhishma is in the mood of Dasyaras. And Sakhyaras is generally considered to be a high level of realization. But generally we hear that very often from Acharyas, Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. We should not be in the business of comparing devotees. We should not be in the business of grading devotees, because it's not good for a heart. If you start comparing devotees, we say that Arjun is superior to Bhishma, the Gopis is superior to Arjun. So I will only meditate on the Ras Leela. Why should I meditate on anything? So it's and also it's offensive. So that should not be a mood.
Yes, Prabhu, that is correct. Thank you. And one understanding that I got from today's class, just correct me if that is true or not. Like when devotees, like Bhishma Dev is saying, I am more, I received more mercy. I am more fortunate that I could see front side of you. And Kunti Devi is saying that you bestowed more mercy on me. So is it also a sign of that humility of the devotee? Like because the point mercy comes is like, I don't deserve it, but still I am getting it. So when they are considering they are far more devotees, they deserve more. But I am getting this, although I don't deserve. In that sense, they are feeling, even though they are saying I received more mercy, it is a sign of humility.
It's a sign of humility. It's a sign of humility because the point they're making is that they're getting the mercy not because they're like greater devotees, but because they need it more. So there is this prayer, right? Mosama Prabhu. Does anybody know?
Mosama
Patita Prabhu.
Say that again.
Mosama Patita Prabhu. Mosama Patita Prabhu na paibe ara.
Right. So this is, I believe this is Narottam Das Thakur.
Yes.
And he's saying that you will not find one who is more fallen. So I am. I should be the recipient of your mercy. So same kind of mood. So they're not saying that they're great devotees, but what they're saying is that because they have more shortcomings, They're thankful that Krishna has bestowed more mercy on them. Okay, so we'll go to the next verse, 1940. Lalita gati vilasa valugasa prananya nirikshana kalpitara rumanaha kritam manukritvatya unumanadana prakritim magan kila yasya gopa vadva. Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Shri Krishna, whose motion and smiles of love attracted. No, we already did this verse, right? I'm sorry. I scrolled through my document mistakenly. Let me go to the right verse. So the next verse is 1943. Sutta Vacha. Sutta Vacha Krishna evam bhagvati manavagdrishti vrittabihi atmanyatmanamaveshya soantah swasuparamat. Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Super Soul, Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent and his breathing stopped. So thus ends the wonderful prayer spoken by Bhishma. So in this verse, Srila Prabhupada translate Aveshya as merged. But one should not consider this to be Sayujya Mukti. Because when we see merge, what the general understanding is that we merge in the impersonal Brahman, and that is Sayujya Mukti. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains what this merge means. So he says the stage attained by Bhishma Dev while quitting his material body is called Nirvilkalpa Samadhi, because he merged his self into thinking of the Lord and his mind into remembering his different activities. He chanted the glories of the Lord, and by his sight he began to see the Lord personally before him, and thus all his activities became concentrated upon the Lord without deviation. This is the highest stage of perfection, and it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada is saying he became merged in terms of his attention. So whether it was what he was seeing, what he was thinking, what he was feeling, by that he became completely absorbed. And actually Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Prabhupada translates Veshya as merged, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur translates it as absorbed. That Bhishma became completely absorbed into Krishna. The same connotation explained by Prabhupada in the purport. So Sutta Goswami says that all the facilities that Bhishma had, he says mana, vak, drishti, vritabhi. So mana is mind, vak is speech, drishti is sight, and vritabhi is activities, became absorbed in Krishna. And this situation at the end of the life can only be obtained by the steady practice of the 9 forms of bhakti throughout one's life. So, commenting a little bit more on the word aveshya, when we were discussing 1940, in which Bhishma Dev was meditating on the Rasa Leela pastime, and then I had mentioned that you should keep that in mind because it will be relevant later on. So there, Bhishma Dev, he also makes the same point, that the gopis merged into Krishna. How? By imitating. They started imitating. They were so much in this separation, they were so intensely thinking of Krishna that they became merged into his activities. They started imitating his Govardhan Leela or his Putna Leela. Some of the gopis, it's not mentioned in the Bhagavatam, but it's mentioned by some of the commentators, that some of the gopis actually acquired a form like Krishna. Their body became bluish in color. Some of the gopis, they assumed the Tribhanga form of Krishna, not because it was Sahyajamukti, but because their absorption was so complete that they merged into Krishna's Nam, Rup, Gun, Leela. Same thing happens to Bhishma Dev here, and um, uh, that is one reason why Bhishma Dev also calls on to, or Sutta Goswami talks about this meditation of Bhishma Dev to clarify that just like the gopis did not merge into the impersonal Krishna but merged into his Nam, Rup, Gun, Leela, same thing happened to Bhishma Dev over here. So the Aveshya is that he merged into Krishna's in the form of meditating on his name, form, qualities and pastimes. So Sutta Goswami also talks about, he observes two external symptoms to infer that Bhishma has left his body. So he says Antasvashaha, that his breathing ended, and Uparamant, that his external functions ceased, or he stopped speaking. So the vocative use of the word implies that Bhishma ceased his breathing and stopped his external functions. So this is consistent with their earlier assertion that Bhishma died at will. So it's not that Bhishma's breathing stopped, but Bhishma stopped his breathing. And it's not that his external functions ceased, but he ceased his external functions by voluntarily giving up his body. Okay, next verse, 1944. Sampadayamanamagyaya bhishmam brahmani nishkale sarve babuvasте tushnim vayamishvadinatyaye. Knowing that Bhishma Dev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent, like birds at the end of the day. So this verse again, it perpetuates the notion that Bhishma Dev merged. So the word that is used is Sampadaya Manam. That Sampadaya Manam translates to merged, and Brahmani Nishkale. The Brahmani Nishkale translates to the Brahman. So again in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains this, and he says that to enter into or to become merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute means to enter the original home of the living being. And then Srila Prabhupada, he doesn't give it here, but he in Bhagavad Gita and in other lectures, he gives this example of a green bird and a green tree. That a green bird can be seen flying into a green tree, and a casual observer will think that the bird has merged into the tree. But actually speaking, the reason that they become indistinguishable because they are become so similar in their qualities. That the tree is green in color, the bird is green, and so they become indistinguishable. But actually, the tree remains separate and the bird remains separate. So when the devotees attain a high level of meditation on the Lord, they acquire qualities very similar to Krishna, just like the example of the iron in the fire. So to a casual observer, they may appear to merge into the Lord, but actually they are. So Prabhupada makes this example, gives this example that actually it should be considered that the devotee has entered into his original home, which is the spiritual world. Later on in the purport, Prabhupada says, Bhishma Dev as a pure devotee of the Lord, entered the spiritual realm in one of the Vaikuntha planets, where the Lord in his eternal form of Parthasarathi predominates over the unconditioned living beings who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. So Prabhupada here for the liberated living beings, I don't see him use this word very well. I don't remember the unconditioned. So he's using that as an antonym to conditioned. So he's saying unconditioned living beings who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. The love and affection which bind the Lord and devotees are exhibited in the case of Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev never forgot the Lord in his transcendental feature as Parthasarathi. And the Lord was present personally before Bhishma Dev while he was passing into the transcendental world. That is the highest perfection of life. So this is one of the very few verses I found that is translated a lot differently between Srila Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So we know that Prabhupada wrote his purport largely from the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he also referred, and other acharya that he referred to quite a bit was Sridhar Swami. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he translates it differently, and what I would request Prem Kishore Prabhu, if you can put the verse back on the screen, and we can just see the differences. So Vishwanath Chakravarti it's translated as, so you have Prabhupada's translation in front of you, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur translated as the ignorant who were like birds who think that the day has been destroyed at the approach of the evening, thought that Bhishma had attained the Brahman and fell silent. No, if you can put the verse, not the purport, Prabhu. The verse and the translation. So you see that Prabhupada translates it a lot differently, and Vishnu translates it as the ignorant who were like birds who think that the day has been destroyed at the approach of the evening, thought that Bhishma had attained the Brahman and fell silent. So even though the verses are translated very differently, the interesting thing is it is only because of the different translation of one word in the verse, which is agyaya. Now, gyaya means knowledge, and when you prefix it with it means ignorance. When you prefix the with an and make it a long then it reinforces the same word. So gyaya is knowledge, agyaya is ignorance, agyaya is knowledge. Again, more reinforced to a greater form. So Srila Prabhupada, he translates agyaya, if you see, as knowing. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he translates as ignorance. Now, again, it's not that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is not aware of the rules of Sanskrit. There are also rules which say that according to meter, and short a can become a long a for alankar, just to make the meter methodical, rhythmic, just to make the meter rhythmic. So that is why so the way Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is interpreting this verse is that out of ignorance, the birds think that when night comes, the day has ended. But and then, so this is obviously an analogy. So he says that similarly, common or normal human beings, they might think that Bhishma Dev at the time of his death has merged into the Brahman. But it is not so, because at the end of the day, the sun does not disappear. The sun goes to another place and then it reappears again. The birds out of the ignorance, they are not aware of it, which is why they lament. So the common people are not aware of the fact that Krishna is always there. So he says that ignorant think that Bhishma passed away and attained liberation. So this is Sayuja Mukti. The intelligent understand that at the very moment, in an invisible form, Bhishma fights on the ground with Krishna holding the chariot wheel in his hand. So this is the Aprakrit Leela, and the analogy is that even when the sun disappears, it is still shining somewhere else. So Krishna may have disappeared from there, but the same Parthasarthi Leela is being enacted in some other universe. And the other point is that in a future appearance of Krishna, Bhishma will also appear with him. So this is that the sun, even from that place, it may have disappeared and caused darkness, but it will reappear again. So even in this very universe, at a later point of time, the same pastime of Krishna, Bhishma as Parthasarthi will be reenacted here. There are Jiva Goswami gives a slightly different interpretation, but I'm not going to go into that because Jiva Goswami's mood is very, very. He's like a professor. Anything that he says, he will give quotes. It becomes a little time-consuming, but he essentially is kind of bridging over. He's giving an interpretation that is very similar to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation, and basically bridging it over to Prabhupada's interpretation. But if you look at the purport, there is not much difference. Srila Prabhupada is also saying the same thing, that Bhishma Deva, at the end of his life, he attained the Nitya Leela, entered into the Nitya Leela of Krishna as Parthasarthi. Same point is being made by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So one interesting point that Jiva Goswami mentions here is, so he says that how can Bhishma go back to, or he says one may argue that how can Bhishma go back to Krishna's Nitya Leela? Because we know that Bhishma is a Vasu. We know that there was a Vasu by the name of Deus, or who was cursed by Vashishta to come as Bhishma. And then Jiva, he quotes Brahma Sutra to say Yavad Adhikaram Avastatir Adhikaranam, that the Jiva's holding post in the universe remains as long as the term lasts. So he's presenting a counterpoint, that we know that in the Brahma Sutra this point is made, that if the Jiva holding the position of Vasu will stay in that post until that term lasts. But then he says that in the case of Bhishma, this is not true. Why? Because he's an eternally liberated soul, and by his pastime, he expanded as a Vasu. As per the Chandogya Upanishad, he quotes Tasya Sarveshu Lokeshu Kamachar Bhavati, that the liberated souls have special powers and they wander all over the planet at their will. So the point that he's making is that Bhishma is not Vasu. So Bhishma is an eternal associate of Krishna, but he expanded into the role of Vasu. He was cursed, so he came in the role of Bhishma, and when his pastime ended, he went back to Krishna's Nitya Leela.
Prabhuji, does that mean that Vasu still exists and playing his role, but Bhishma Dev goes back to Godhead?
Yes, that is my understanding. Okay, so we'll do the next verse. Tatra dundubhyane durdev manav vaditaha shashamshu sadhavarag rajanam khatpetu pushpa vratasya. Thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect. And from the sky fell showers of flowers. So Prabhupada has a fairly long purport to this, and he makes points that are more preaching points. So he uses the verse, so they're not 100% correlated to the verse, but he uses that to make preaching points. So the purport is very good to read and perhaps to memorize for preaching activities. So I'll just summarize the points that Prabhupada made. So the first point that he makes is that there is sentient life all over the universe. The point that there are demigods in the sky, humans. So that means there is life in the all over the universe, not just as we see. Second point he makes is that spiritual qualification is the real qualification. That is why even the demigods were glorifying Bhishma. Who was a human being because he was spiritually qualified. Third point he makes says that travel within the universe was executed by subtle means. So he said that when Bhishma Dev was passing away, the great sages came to witness from different planets of the universe. And at the time of it passing away, the demigods came. So they came from all over the universe, but not by mechanical means, not by the means of airplanes, but through the power of the meditation and through mantras. Fourth point he makes is that the body of a self-realized soul is considered spiritual. And this is an important point because we see that when Vaishnavas, advanced Vaishnavas, when they die, the body is not burnt. And Prabhupada explains that in the purport, this showering of flowers from heaven is a sign of recognition by great demigods. And it should never be compared to the decoration of a dead body. The body of Bhishma Dev lost its material effects due to being surcharged with spiritual realization. And thus the body was spiritualized as when the iron becomes red hot when in contact with fire. The body of a fully self-realized soul is not therefore accepted as material. Special ceremonies are observed for such spiritual bodies. So we see that when advanced Vaishnavas leave their body, then the special ceremony Prabhupada is referring to here is a Samadhi ceremony. So their bodies are embalmed. So generally we burn the body to return it because it's made of matter and it returns to matter. But because advanced devotees, the body is spiritualized, it is preserved as an object of worship. And the fifth point Prabhupada makes here is about, so he says that it has become a fashion to observe the so-called Jayanti ceremony for any and every common man. According to authorized Shastras, such a Jayanti ceremony for an ordinary man, however exalted he may be materially, is an offense to the Lord, because Jayanti is reserved for the day when the Lord appears on the earth. So Prabhupada does not call out explicitly, but he's talking about Gandhi Jayanti. And people say Mahatma Gandhi, Gandhi Jayanti. And he's criticizing that. And I think in India also probably it's become more of a culture now that there's Gandhi Jayanti, Nehru Jayanti, and mostly they're politicians. They're great men, but they're politicians. And he's saying that the Jayanti ceremony can only be used to celebrate the appearance of Krishna and his expansions. Okay, 1946. Tasya niraranadini sampratesya bhargava yudhishtra karyatva muhurtam dukito bhavat. O descendant of Bhrigu, Shaunak, after performing funeral rituals for the dead body of Bhishma Dev, Maharaj Yudhishthira was momentarily overtaken with grief. So, some pratyasya, and Prabhupada translates this, of the dead body, and can also be analyzed as some. Some is samyak, completely, para, which is Parmeshwar, and itasya, which is the root word for prapatasya, or attained. So in that context, this word translate is that the person who attained the Supreme Lord completely. So it has been said that Bhishma is an eternal associate of the Lord, and then he attained Krishna completely as Parthasarthi in his Aprakritik Leela. So in the previous description of Bhishma Dev, we had seen Sutta Goswami saying that his giving up his body, he stopped his breathing. So the word uparamat, we can understand as meaning that he became detached from his body. So the same point is being made that on his own volition, Bhishma became detached from his body, and he completely entered into the pastimes of Krishna. So one may question that Yudhishthira, who is a Mahajan, why was he overtaken by grief? So it says Duhoketa, if he understood that Bhishma Dev returned to the spiritual world, and Prabhupada mentions in the purport that yes, as a devotee, Yudhishthira was aware of the fact that Bhishma Dev has gone back to his eternal abode, but the grief is because of separation. So it is not, so the grief is for one's own self. It is, so the grief is that in future Yudhishthira will not be able to associate with Bhishma Dev. That is the cause of the grief. And it's also mentioned that it was muhurtam, it was momentary, because because Yudhishthira himself is a liberated soul, so he could understand that as an eternal associate, he is entered into Krishna's Nitya Leela. So it is interesting that the grief at the death of another person. This is a essay that I was reading. It's not. It's a theological essay, but not a Vaishnava theological essay. But it is interesting that they note that the grief at the death of another person is not for the person, but for one's own self. So it is generally that now that you're dead, who's going to take care of me? Or now that you're dead, who will provide for me? Or now that you're dead, who will I love more? Or now that you're dead, how will I have companionship, etc. So really speaking, by nature, the grief is more directed towards ourselves, but that grief is more of a material grief. Here Yudhishthira's grief is more that a Vaishnava feels on separation of another Vaishnava. Okay, we'll do the next verse, 1947. Tustavur munya hitashtaha Krishnam tad bhuyanam abhi tataste Krishna hridayaha swashram prayupunaha. All the great sages then glorified Lord Shri Krishna, who was present there, by confidential Vedic hymns. Then all of them returned to their respective hermitages, bearing always Lord Krishna within their hearts. So Tad Guyanamabhi indicates that they said, O Krishna, affectionate to the devotees, controlled by prema, we offer respects to your affectionate nature. So they witnessed the sweet loving exchange between Krishna Bhishma, or between Krishna and his pure devotees. Okay, so we'll do the next verse, 1948. Tato yudhishthiro gatva sah Krishna gajahvayam pitram santavayamasha gandharim cha tapasvinim. Thereafter, Maharaj Yudhishthir at once went to his capital, Hastinapur, accompanied by Lord Shri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt Gandhari, who was an ascetic. So Sutta specifically calls out Gandhari as Gandharim cha tapasvinim. And Prabhupada in the purport, he talks briefly about he glorifies Gandhari. So we see this change in the mood of Maharaj Yudhishthir. So far he was the one who needed to be consoled, and in a way he was inconsolable. That Krishna tried to console him, Vyasadeva tried to console him, Dhome tried to console him, but he was just getting more and more dejected. Now because of the instructions of Bhishma Dev, and because of witnessing the prayers of Bhishma Dev, Yudhishthir he is reassured, he is re-established to the point that now he is providing support to others, and he is now in a position to provide support to the entire kingdom. Gandhari, you all know about Gandhari's pastime. She was from Gandhar, the sister of Shakuni, and Bhishma Dev had actually attacked Gandhar Desh, and he had asked them to surrender, which they did not. So he had imprisoned Subal, the father of Gandhari, and Shakuni and all his brothers, and then he would give them only 1 grain of rice each every day to eat. So all of them, they would give up their rice to Shakuni, saying that we will die, but you live to take our revenge. So ultimately that's what happened. They all died, and Shakuni, he was the last one alive. So he agreed to accept the dominion of the Kurus, but he had also given this vow to his brothers and his father that he would extract revenge for them, which is why Shakuni did whatever he did. So Prabhupada says that in her actions she was a great ascetic. Besides that, so this was Gandhari living as the wife, as a chaste wife of Dhritarashtra, performing austerity. She was a great ascetic. Besides that, the shock she suffered because of the wholesale killing of her 100 sons and her grandsons also was certainly too much for a woman. But she suffered all this just like an ascetic. Gandhari, although a woman, is no less than Bhishma Dev in character. They are both remarkable personalities in the Mahabharata. Okay, we'll do the next verse. Pitra chanumata raja Vasudevanumadita Chakar Rajyam Dharmena Pitrapaita Mahavibhuhu. After this, the great religious king Maharaj Yudhishthir executed the royal power in the kingdom strictly according to the codes of royal principles approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Shri Krishna. So this is the last verse in the chapter. The Prabhupada explains that Chakara Rajayam means that Maharaj Yudhishthir is the ideal monarch, and monarchy under a trained king like Maharaj Yudhishthir is by far the most superior form of government, superior to modern republics or governments of the people by the people. The mass of the people, especially in the age of Kali, are all born Shudras, basically low-born, ill-trained, unfortunate, and badly associated. So he's talking about us over here. They themselves do not know the highest perfectional aim of life, therefore votes cast by them actually have no value. And this person elected by such irresponsible voters cannot be responsible representatives like Maharaj Yudhishthir. So this is a segue into the next chapter, which is at least the early part of the chapter talks about the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthir, the first 6 verses. And Prabhupada's purport is also very consistent. So in each of the verse, he will make the same point, and these are preaching purports, where he makes the same point that democracy is demon crazy. That if there are fools who are voting, they will vote a fool in office. If there are Shudras who are voting, they will vote a bigger Shudra in the office. And the point that he makes is that the real flourishing kingdom can only be established when the king is a devotee of Krishna. And he uses Maharaj Yudhishthir as an example. So we'll see that theme, Prabhupada repeating it over and over again for emphasis. In each of the 6 verses, we'll see he'll reinforce this theme. So I'll stop over here, see if there's any questions, comments. Like I said, this is the end of the 9th chapter. Next week we'll start with the 10th chapter, and I think Achyuta will send out the questions in the meantime, after in the intermediate period also. Any questions or comments on the verses we did?
One question, Prabhuji. The pastime that you mentioned of, no, I don't say pastime, but the activity like Shakuni, like was arrested and taking 1 grain from everyone. That one, actually I heard that from childhood, but later at one point I think from devotees I heard that because Gandhari was not married to King Pandu, that was one of the reason Shakuni became envious of Bhishma. And given this pastime, when he was arrested so long by the kings of Hastinapur, why would again they have an alliance with the family and invite into their own family? It is like keeping an enemy always next to us. That whole, the time frames, if you can share, like which happened first, which happened later.
So I think I mentioned this pastime because Prabhupada mentioned it in the purport. I don't want that to become the topic of. So this is not a Mahabharata discussion, right? I think Prabhupada glorifies Gandhari as an ascetic. I mentioned it a little bit over there, but Mahabharata pastimes are that once you start unraveling them, then there's a lot of backstories. This particular pastime does not appear in the Mahabharata. It appears in one of the Puranas. So and we see many of these pastimes appear a little differently in different scriptures. So we'll just leave it at that.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you. And probably one more question, Prabhuji. Is still monarchy is a better governance than democracy, Prabhuji?
So Srila Prabhupada makes that point quite consistently. That so he says benevolent monarchy, and by benevolent monarchy, what he means is when the king is properly situated. So when Sutta Goswami begins to glorify the rule of Maharaj Yudhishthir, then he makes this point over and over again, that if the king is a devotee of Krishna, then everything follows through, not only because the king is properly situated, but because then the demigods become happy, the forces of nature become happy. So everybody tries to serve the devotees, and in that way, everything is properly situated. So yes, Prabhupada states this as, in fact, he states it as a future aspiration. He says that would happen if there are strong enough devotees that appear.
And even Prabhuji, even if he is not a benevolent king, but still stable governance is possible when a king is there, absolute monarch, because democracy every 5 years change and they wanted to cheat by pleading. So is it still okay to have some monarchy than the concept of democracy?
So Prabhupada, he focuses mostly on the monarch being a devotee of Krishna. That's his focus.
Raja Rishi.
Yes, as a Raja Rishi. Okay, any other thoughts?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just to say that Bhishma Dev got a very glorious departure. Krishna was face to face, present personally, and this doesn't happen to everybody.
That is true, Prabhu. And I think that's why Bhishma Dev is appreciating his good fortune and the mercy of Krishna.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, we'll end over here. Next week, we'll start with the 10th chapter. Achyuta, are you going to, do you want to share? When will you be sending the questions out?
Yeah, probably by tomorrow I should be able to send the questions for all the 9 chapters, and yeah, and then moving forward I'll send after each chapter is done. Is that okay, Fuji?
So I'm thinking, is it better to send it after the chapter or before the chapter?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's I'll send it before the chapter. So I'll send it up to 10th chapter, up to 10th chapter tomorrow, and then moving forward I'll send it before we begin the chapter.
Okay, that'd be good, because I think the way these questions have been formulated, at least in the MIHE course, is that the students answer the questions and then they attend the discussion. So the questions are basically designed to basically help them read the purports a little bit more deeply, and then it kind of increases it shortens the lectures and it increases the understanding of the lecture. So let's try that. Let's send it before the lectures.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Vanchakalpatarubhayascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Tagore Premanande. Hare Hare Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.